How does Islam view the act of showing off or riya and its effects on one's spiritual state? How does Islam view the act of showing off or riya and its effects on one's spiritual state? This is an excellent question. May Allah reward you for asking it. Riya, also translated as ostentation, means to do something to be seen. Another category or another form of this type of ostentation is called sum'ah, which is a similar philosophy, a similar concept, but instead of doing something to be seen, it is doing something to develop a reputation that people need to hear about it. So, as an example of riya, you're reciting Quran and people come into close proximity and you start reciting louder and more beautifully and more melodiously so that they can be impressed with your recitation. Your tajweed becomes more crisp and your makharij becomes more pronounced and so forth. That's riya, that's showing off. Sum'ah would be that you, in your own capacity, you learn Quran, you recite Quran beautifully, but you do it because you want people to think of you as a excellent reciter of the Quran, as someone who is proficient at the recitation of the Quran, who recites beautifully, etc. You don't necessarily do it in front of people, but you like the idea of people coming to learn about this and people celebrating you and lauding you as an excellent reciter. So that's sum'ah, also a form of ostentation. As for the serious implications of these spiritual diseases, understand that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam, he described riya and sum'ah as a whole. He described this as ash-shirkul asghar, the minor form of shirk. I think that should be enough to scare any of us away from these qualities, bearing in mind, of course, that to completely abstain from these qualities is not as easy as it may seem. Human beings are social beings, right? Insan, uns. We have social relations with one another. We don't do really well soul alone, right? We are meant to be in groups, in nations, in tribes, as Allah Ta'ala created us. We are meant to be in a relationship of some sort or the other. And it's very easy to turn that which is supposed to be for Allah into something that we do for those around us. And unfortunately, it's something that's very easy to fall into. The fact that the Prophet ﷺ spoke about riya and sum'ah as ashirkul asghar, the minor form of polytheism, should make us tremble, because shirk is the most heinous crime by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ascribing partners unto Allah is the most heinous crime. Now, shirkul akbar, the major form of shirk, is to deliberately ascribe a partner unto Allah in the form of an idol, in the form of a partner, by saying that Allah is, the energy, and Allah is the power and the force, and Allah is Mother Nature, and wal-iyadhu billah, right? To say that Allah has a son or Allah has a partner, etc. This would be the major form of shirk. To worship idols, this would be the major form of shirk. Now, riya and sum'ah is the next type of shirk, where you believe in one Allah, but you do that which is meant to be for Allah to impress others or for others to come to know about it. It's so heinous and it's so dangerous for our spiritual well-being that it has the potential to destroy our entire life of ibadah. The very first people who will be called forward on the day of Qiyamah, and this should also make us shudder, is going to be the alim, it's going to be the qari, and it's going to be the mujahid who died in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The alim, meaning the person who learned Islam and taught it to others. The qari, meaning the person who read the Quran, memorized the Quran, taught the Quran, recited the Quran. And the shaheed, or the mujahid who passed away in battle, is the person who gave up their life for a noble cause that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recognizes as such and died. these three individuals, or these three categories of individuals, will be called, and Allah will ask them, what did you do with the favors that I had given you? And the alim will say, oh Allah, I taught people and I learned your deen for your sake. And the qari will say, oh Allah, I learned and memorized your book and I recited it for your sake. And the mujahid or the shaheed will say, oh Allah, I gave up my life for your sake. And in each instance, Allah tells the person, you have lied. You have done what you did in order for people to say that you're a big alim. Or you have lied. You recited the Quran in order for people to admire you as this amazing qari. Or to the shaheed, Allah will say, you have lied. You gave up your life because you wanted people to remember you as this brave warrior. You have attained what you sought out. You have attained what you sought out. In other words, the niyyah that you had, the intention, the objective that you had was already attained. And then Allah Azza wa Jal will command the angels to take them and throw them on their faces into the fires of Jahannam. Wal'iyadhu billah. Allahumma ajirna minan nar. Allah save us from the punishment of the fire. The scary thing about this, for me personally, is not knowing who these individuals are and whether I'm one of them or not. Am I going to be called on the day of Qiyamah and be faced with this event after knowing the hadith, after hearing the hadith, after teaching the hadith? Now think about it. The student or the alim who is going to be called here knew this hadith, must have known the hadith in order to be an alim. It's a very well-known hadith. And yet, they find themselves in that predicament. May Allah protect us and save us from ostentation. And then finally, this would be enough, but the last point that I want to mention is we are about to enter into the month of Sha'ban very shortly. And the month of Sha'ban contains Laylatul Nisf min Shahri Sha'ban, also known as Laylatul Bara'a. And that would be the middle of the month of Sha'ban, the 15th night of the month of Sha'ban. That night is considered the second most powerful and significant night of the year, in that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are many narrations about the night. The one that is most authentic says that Allah Azza wa Jal directs his attention to all of his creation on that night and forgives everyone except for two. And the two categories that are mentioned, again in this particular narration, is the mushrik, the person who commits shirk, and the mushahin, the person who harbors ill feelings. And again, remember, shirk is of two categories. There's the major form and there's the minor form. And we need to be free of both forms in order to combat being deprived from this blessing of this night. Finally, in relation to this, I would like to remind myself and yourself that we could save us. We could save our souls, if you'd like, from ostentation, from riyah, from sum'ah. We could save ourselves from this through the ibadah of fasting. Because the unique aspect of fasting is that if we apply the rules and regulations and we follow the recommendations of fasting, fasting is such an ibadah that would have no riyah and no sum'ah. And of course, I refer to voluntary fasting. The only caveat in relation to this type of voluntary fasting is that you shouldn't tell a soul that you are fasting, nor should you give any clues that you are fasting. You should try to avoid that at all costs, but the sunnah guides us about these matters. So fasting is one of the ways in which we could combat riyah and sum'ah. There's no glory to it. There's no reputation to it. There's no people coming to know about it unless you go out of your way to do that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله